Jean, thank you so much for welcoming me into your home, and of course, for donating to the Giving is Living initiative. We're just overwhelmed by your kindness and your generosity. So I'd love to get to know more about you. Firstly, where you started with your journey into art and sculpting.
Well, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a home where there was a lot of creativity going on. My father was a painter, not a professional, but he exhibited, and he was a very good craftsman, and he taught me to tool leather and to work a lathe and to wood carve and work in soft metal like pewter. So I had a good background. And then eventually I went to art school, qualified as an art teacher, and majored both in painting and sculpture. And then I thought, of course, I was going to be a painter, like my father. But I eventually moved into sculpting. And how that happened was when I was exhibiting in Johannesburg, I was sitting at the pool at the hotel, and this glorious vision of womanhood came walking down to the pool. She looked like one of these 1950s film goddesses, like Diana Dawes or Jane Mansfield. She had a blonde hair piled up on her head and chunks of jewellery, various parts of anatomy, and killer heels and a little bikini, but she was voluminous. She was a very large woman.
Wow.
And she had such confidence and self-assurance, and she looked so graceful and elegant as big people often do.
Yes.
And I thought, well, I just have to capture her in some medium, and painting wasn't enough, so I moved over to sculpture and did her in 3D.
So she was your first.
And she was my first
sculptor
of a series which I called Madonna of Musenberg.
Oh, okay.
And I've been circling her ever since.
So does music play a part in some of your influences as well?
Oh, yes, yes. My mother was a pianist, and I've done a whole series of musicians as well. I like to work in series because it means you can explore aspects of women with every sculpture that you make.
Yeah, I suppose sculpting gives you the opportunity to work all angles, all positions, all different positions. And
yes, but also different characteristics.
Yes,
and different personalities of your subject.
So you, in order to do that, you must be a great reader of people. Then I think. Do you think that you?
I watch people all the time. I'm a voyeur. Yeah, I'm a records clerk.
And who would you say has there any public figure or celebrity or somebody that really stood out for you in terms of their personality, their character, their charisma?
Of all the people I've sculpted,
yeah.
you mean? Yeah. Well, I think Mandela was the person who was really the most influential. I found him to be absolutely charming, and I was very taken by him, and I enjoyed sculpting him.
Oh, tell me more about that, about your Mandela sculpture.
That was commissioned by Turkey Sequali, um, to be put outside the prison from where he was released. And I spent a long time researching, looking at images, pictures, movies, because I had to do this when he left the prison, which was 17 years after the sculpture was started.
Oh, okay.
So I spent more time researching than I did actually getting to sculpt. Once I knew what I was going to do, the sculpting went fairly quickly and easily, and was a very enjoyable sculpture to do. I loved doing it.
And I believe he was a very big sculpture as well that you did of him.
That was just over 3 meters.
Wow. And when you're sculpting something that big, where do you even begin? Like, what is there a particular part of the body you have to do first, or?
No, it's actually quite an easy procedure. I make a maquette, which is a small version of what you plan to do.
Okay. Yes.
And then I would increase it by so many times. And then build an armature and clad it, metal armature, and then clad it in polystyrene and carve it out to the position, and then I'd work clay over that.
So these processes, did you have to learn them or study them, or did they come naturally to you?
Well, as far as the sculpting goes, I learned to sculpt.
Okay.
And then when I needed to cast, I just found that there wasn't a art foundry in Cape Town. So I decided the only way I was going to get my work done was to start my own foundry.
Oh, wow.
And I had the basics, but I had to have more information, and I spent a long time lurking around industrial foundries. Then I found somebody who was very interested in art foundries. He himself had trained in a foundry which made bells, which is very similar process to the art casting, and he gave me a lot of information. And then I went to the States, and I worked under Professor Ron Young, and got the finer details. And then I worked in an art foundry in the States. Wow. And then I came back and I opened a foundry here.
Fantastic.
In my back garden. Eventually we had to move. We thought we'd better move to an industrial area before we were thrown out.
Because it's very noisy.
Noisy,
yeah.
Yes. And we now have our foundry in Deep River.
Fantastic. So here we are in your home, and you also open this up to the public as well to come and see. So I was wondering if maybe you could show me around as well.
Yes, certainly.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. And I can see some of your paintings here in the background as well.
I do portraits of my sculptures once I've finished them. I love to put detail in, and you can't put detail into a sculpture. A sculpture is about shape and form and space, but I can put all that excess detail into the paintings that I do.
Brilliant. So that it adds another whole dimension to the sculpture.
Yes.
So do you have any influences and any favourite sculptors throughout history that you've...
Oh yes, very much so. When I started some years ago, my sons were all called up into the military, and I was very upset about this. What I did, it was take figures out of the Renaissance, Rubens and Titian and Botticelli, and well-known figures, and then I gave them weapons of war. This one over here is Eve, and instead of offering Adam the apple, she is offering him a hand grenade. Botticelli's Venus, instead of holding her long lock, she's holding an AK-47.
Oh, wow.
And what I was hoping to do was show the absurdity of war, and hopefully my large Renaissance figures holding weapons of war would bring the point home.
And did it?
It never changed the course of the war, but it gave me a lot of satisfaction.
And these three over here?
Those are part of the circus. It's called the Ultimate Act. And I've taken figures, women who are bold and courageous and doing dangerous feats, flying through the air and rope dancing and flying on the trapeze. And I've done a life-size one of an African woman and the other one a Caucasian woman having this very animated conversation. And it is in Johannesburg at the moment. Life-size, it's been standing outside Paul's for quite a while, Paul's restaurant.
Okay, so here we are in your gallery at home. So tell me a little bit about these sculptures.
Well, these have been inspired by the work of Zulu Credo Mutwa. He was a Zulu historian, and he would give the history of his race orally, and he would encourage his people to come around and listen. He would say, "Ndaba, my children," and he wrote a book called "Ndaba, my children," and he gives the history of the Zulu nation in a mythological sort of fashion, and their gods and goddesses, and it reads just like Greek mythology, and it is absolutely beautiful. And so what I've done is taken figures from his book, and this is my interpretation of his history.
This one here in colour, how did you achieve the colour?
That is done with patina. It depends on what chemical you use and the temperature that the sculpture is at and how you apply it as to what colour and texture you can get.
Is this one of your only ones in colour?
One of the few ones in colour, yes.
What was the decision for the colour on this one?
Well, this is a Berber woman, and they've got this beautiful blue robes that they wear. I couldn't get the exact blue, but that's more or less.
Fantastic. So even sculptures that high, you're up there sculpting with your hand?
Yes, I build the scaffolding around it, and then I climb up it, and I'm terrified of heights, so I hang on with one hand and sculpt like a monkey with the other.